Ragnar smiled as the biting wind clung to his beard. The runes whispered not of blood, but of the silver of distant shores. As their dragon-headed ship sliced through the icy waters, these weren't just warriors chasing loot. They were farmers and craftsmen braving the sea's graveyard for the ultimate victory, a future. When foreign shores pierced the horizon at Lindisfarne, it wasn't just a raid. It was the dawn of a 3-century saga. While legends whisper Ragnar's name, the true history of the Northmen is far deeper than the swing of an axe. Was this an extinction, or the beginning of a new world? Today, we witness the evolution of the Vikings, from their brutal courage and rich mythology to the absolute mastery of the seas. What is the meaning of the word Viking? The word Viking is a rich term that encompasses several different meanings in terms of its origin and usage. The most widely accepted origin of the word is the Old Norse word Vikinger, which directly means pirate or raider. Some linguists argue that the word is derived from a root vik, meaning bay or creek. According to this theory, Viking means one who waits in the bay or people of the bay. Today, although the word Viking is used to describe all Scandinavian peoples who came from Scandinavia and spread to various parts of Europe between the 8th and 11th centuries, in their own time, this term was expressed only for warriors who set out on such sea voyages. The heart of life. Home, family, and belief. Although only war comes to mind when Vikings are mentioned, they were actually master farmers and craftsmen. The longhouses, the heart of social life, warmth and survival in Viking society, were masterpieces of architectural engineering. They were not just shelters, but social centers symbolizing the power of the clan. Longhouses, as their name suggests, were narrow and long structures, 15 to 75 meters in length. The roof was usually covered with straw or turf. Viewed from the outside, they resembled an upside-down ship on land. This sloped structure prevented heavy snow loads from accumulating on the roof and collapsing the house. Materials varied by geography. While wood was predominant in Scandinavia, in Iceland and Greenland, where trees were scarce, the walls were made of thick stone and turf blocks. Inside the house, instead of separate rooms, there was a large hall where everyone stayed together. A hearth stretched along the very center of the house. This fire was for both cooking and heating. There were wooden platforms along the walls. They were used for sitting and working during the day and for sleeping at night by spreading furs over them. A longhouse did not belong only to humans. During the harshest months of winter, precious animals were taken into a compartment at one end of the house. The body heat of the animals helped warm the house. At the other end of the house, there were storerooms where food was kept, or areas where women worked on weaving looms. In the center of the house stood the ornate, wood-carved high seat, where the clan leader sat. Guests were hosted here, strategies were formed here, and poets told their sagas by this fire. Longhouses were the safest fortresses that kept the community together against the freezing northern cold outside. The high status of Viking women who managed the farm, the quays, and justice. In Viking society, when men went on sea voyages or trading journeys lasting for months, all absolute power over the home and farm passed into the hands of the woman. This situation made Viking women much more free and authoritative than women in many contemporary European societies. The most powerful detail symbolizing the Viking woman's role in household management was the key. Viking women were known for the large metal keys hanging from the belts at their waists. These keys represented not just doors, but the clan's food stores, treasure chests, and property. The number of keys at a woman's waist was an indicator of her authority and social status within that household. While the men were away, a Viking woman would organize agricultural work, supervise the care of animals, and make preparations for winter. She would direct the slaves and free workers in the house and manage the division of labor. She managed the trade of products produced on the farm, such as wool, butter, or cheese, ensuring the family's economic balance. One of the most important corners of the longhouse was the weaving loom. Women were the secret heroes of the Viking success at sea because they were the ones who wove those massive sails. Additionally, spinning wool and sewing clothes to prevent the family from freezing in winter were vital responsibilities of the woman. This powerful position of Viking women within the home also granted them legal rights. If her husband treated her badly or neglected the home, a Viking woman could declare her divorce in the presence of witnesses and return to her father's house, taking her dowry with her. She could own her own property and inherit land. Home management included not only physical tasks, but also spiritual protection. Women acted as healers with herbal medicines and protected the health of family members. Some women were accepted as Volva, guiding the family by reading the runes. The Viking woman was not just the wife waiting at home. She was the logistical genius and unshakable authority that ensured survival in the harsh nature of the fjords. Viking women prepared their children for the future as warriors, farmers, and ladies by raising them not with fairy tales but with the harsh realities of life. Mothers gave small wooden swords and axes to the boys. From the age of 5 to 6, under their mother's supervision, they learned to herd animals, hunt, and perform basic agricultural tasks. Girls were their mother's closest helpers. They learned how to spin wool, weave, cook, and, most importantly, recognize medicinal plants from their mothers. A Viking girl would have the knowledge to manage the entire logistics of a household before reaching adolescence. Viking mothers told skaldish poems and stories of the gods to their children while putting them to sleep or sitting by the fire on winter nights. These stories were not just entertainment, but moral lessons. Loyalty, courage, cunning, and honor were etched into the child's mind through these stories. The idea that you cannot escape fate, but you can stand tall against it, was the most fundamental philosophy a mother instilled in her child. Discipline was strict in Viking homes, but love was shown through protection and survival. Children were accustomed to cold, hunger, and fatigue at a very young age. Complaining was considered a sign of weakness. When a baby was born, the mother was the first person to decide whether the child would survive. It was difficult for weak or disabled babies to survive. If the child was healthy, water was poured over them, they were given a name, and they were accepted into the family. The mother usually chose the child's name from a powerful ancestor so that the spirit and luck of that ancestor would pass to the child. Viking women protected their children not only physically but also spiritually. They embroidered protective runes on the children's clothes and wore Thor's hammer necklaces around their necks. In Viking society, the absolute authority of women in the home sometimes spilled over the threshold of the house and reached the battlefields into the very middle of the shield walls. These warrior women, encountered in Scandinavian sagas and archaeological findings, were called shield-maidens, or skjaldmær in Old Norse. There were several primary reasons why a woman might enter the shield wall. For revenge and honor, a woman whose family was slaughtered could take up arms to continue a blood feud. In families without male heirs, the duty to protect property and honor fell to the woman. For adventure and loot, some women chose the fame that the sea and discovery would bring instead of the static life of the fjords. Archaeological evidence. The Birka warrior. For centuries, it was thought that shield maidens were merely legends. However, a grave found in Birka, Sweden, in the 1880s broke this mold. In this grave, belonging to a high-ranking Viking warrior, 2 horses, a sword, an axe, war knives, and strategy game pieces were found. In 2017, DNA analysis proved that this grand warrior was actually a woman. This finding became the greatest proof that women could rise to the level of commander in Viking armies. The secret of the runes. Not just a writing system, but a mystical bond with the gods. In the Viking world, runes are not just letters, but mystical energies and cosmic symbols representing the workings of the universe. Runes, which mean secret or whisper, are attributed to a divine origin in Norse mythology. The mythological birth of runes. According to legend, the chief god Odin hung from the world tree Yggdrasil for 9 days and 9 nights to master the secrets of the universe and fate. At the end of this state of deep pain and trance, which he reached by sacrificing himself to himself, he saw the runes appearing on the stones on the ground and brought their wisdom to humanity. For this reason, runes are considered a divine blessing and the language of supernatural powers. The runic alphabet. Futhark. The most common system used by the Vikings is Futhark. This name comes from the first 6 letters of the alphabet. Elder Futhark consists of 24 symbols and was used more for mystical/magical purposes. In Younger Futhark, the number of letters was reduced to 16 during the Viking Age, and it was used more for daily correspondence and monument stones. Areas of use and the secret magic and talismans. Runes were carved onto weapons, shields, or jewelry to seek victory in battle, safety on a journey, or healing against diseases. Prophecy. Guidance for the future was obtained by drawing runes carved on pieces of stone or wood from a pouch. Inscriptions. Rune stones erected in memory of fallen warriors were used to immortalize their achievements and lineages. The secret of the runes is the belief that they do not just tell something to the outside world, but that when used with the right intention and knowledge, they can shape a person's inner energy and fate. Mythology, the belief in Odin, Thor, and Freya shaping daily life. The effect of the concept of fate on life. In the world of the Vikings, mythology is not a temple worship performed on Sundays. It is as real as the air breathed, the soil planted, and the axe swung. For them, natural events are the moods of the gods. Thunder is the sound of Thor's chariot, and the stormy sea is the movement of the giant serpent Jormungandr. Here is that massive cosmology that shaped Viking life. 9 realms and the world tree, Yggdrasil. The Viking universe consists of 9 worlds hanging among the branches and roots of Yggdrasil, a massive ash tree. Asgard, the magnificent fortress of the gods. Midgard, the Middle Earth, where humans live, surrounded by a vast ocean. Jotunheim, the icy realm of the giants, the eternal enemies of the gods. Helheim, the misty realm of the dead, where those who did not die in battle go. Principal gods and their characters. Viking gods are not perfect. They also suffer, deceive, and make mistakes. Odin, All-Father, god of wisdom, war, and poetry. He sacrificed an eye for the sake of knowledge and hung himself to find the runes. His ravens, Hugin and Munin, bring him news from the world. Thor, protector of humanity, god of lightning. He maintains order with his hammer Mjolnir, the nightmare of the giants. He is the god most respected by Viking warriors, who often wore his necklace. Loki, the shape-shifting, cunning, and sometimes malicious god of mischief. He is the architect of most of the tragedies among the gods. Freya, goddess of love, fertility, and war. While Odin takes half of the fallen warriors to Valhalla, Freya takes the other half to her own field, Folkvanger. The power of fate. Wyrd and the Norns. In Viking belief, the ultimate power is not the gods, but fate. Three sisters sitting at the roots of Yggdrasil weave the thread of fate for every living being. For a Viking, the greatest virtue is to meet whatever is written in one's fate, even if it is death, with one's head held high. The warrior's reward. Valhalla. For a warrior who dies with honor on the battlefield, death is not an end, but an invitation. These souls, chosen by the Valkyries, are taken to Valhalla, Odin's banquet hall. There, they train by fighting each other during the day, and at night they feast and drink mead at massive tables. Ragnarök. The end of the world. The most striking part that distinguishes Viking mythology from others is the inevitability of an end where even the gods will die. In this great battle, the world will burn, the seas will overflow, and the gods will perish, clashing with the giants. However, this is not an end. It is the harbinger of a new, clean world that will rise from the ashes. Viking mythology tells man, live bravely because your end is already written. Masters of the sea technology and discovery. The main reason the Vikings burst onto the stage of history like a storm was their ships, the most advanced engineering marvels of the period. For them, the sea was not an obstacle, but a massive highway reaching every corner of the world. Here are the secrets that made the Vikings absolute masters of the sea, engineering marvel dragon ships. Viking ships were flexible enough to withstand the giant waves of the ocean and light enough to navigate the shallow waters of rivers. Clinker technique. The hull planks were overlapped and nailed together. This allowed the ship to flex with the waves, preventing it from breaking. Shallow water. Capability. These ships, which could float in waters only 1 meter deep, allowed the Vikings to infiltrate inland through rivers and catch cities unprepared. Double-ended prow. The front and back of the ships were of the same structure. In this way, they could retreat instantly by just changing the direction of the oars without trying to turn in a narrow river. Compassless navigation. Sunstone. How the Vikings travelled thousands of kilometres in the open sea without getting lost remained a mystery for centuries. Ulfbert and crystals. By using calcite crystals called sunstones, they could determine the position of the sun even when the sky was completely cloudy. This method of light refraction enabled them to reach Greenland and America. Nature observation. They read the flight directions of birds, the migration routes of whales, and changes in the color of the water like a map. The boundaries of discovery. Routes extending to 4 directions. Vikings were not just raiders, but some of history's greatest explorers. West route, they colonized Iceland and Greenland. Led by Leif Erikson, they set foot in North America 500 years before Columbus. East route, they descended through Russian rivers to reach the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. They returned to Scandinavia with silver coming from Baghdad. South route, entering the Mediterranean, they reached the coasts of Italy, Spain, and North Africa. Miklagard, the gates of Istanbul. For the Vikings, the center of the world was Miklagard, meaning the great city. The famous Varangian Guards of the Byzantine Emperor consisted of elite Viking warriors known for their loyalty and massive axes. Today, the rune Halfdan was here, carved by a Viking soldier, can still be seen on the marble of the upper floor of Hagia Sophia. For the Vikings, the sea was a playground offered to them by the gods. This mastery over the waves made them the most powerful global force of their age. Famous names in history. Lagertha, known as the first wife of the legendary Ragnar Lodbrok. She led armies with her courage and tactical intelligence. Freydis the Red, the daughter of Eric the Red. Freydis saved her crew during the Vinland expedition by repelling a group of natives single-handedly despite being pregnant. Ragnar Lodbrok, believed to have lived in the 9th century, he is a legendary Danish king known for major raids such as the Siege of Paris. Although his historical existence is still debated, his sons are known to be real historical characters. Ivar the Boneless, one of the sons of Ragnar and leaders of the great heathen army. He is known for his strategic intelligence in the invasion of England. Björn Ironside, another son of Ragnar. Björn gained fame for his expeditions extending to the Mediterranean and his rule in Sweden. Rollo, Duke of Normandy, the leader who founded today's Normandy region after his raids on the French coast, and is the ancestor of the Norman dynasty. He is the great-great-grandfather of King William I of England. Leif Erikson, accepted as the first European explorer to set foot in North America approximately 500 years before Christopher Columbus. Eric the Red, the explorer who founded the first permanent Norse settlement in Greenland after being exiled from Iceland. Harold I, the historical figure accepted as the first king of the country by uniting Norway. War and trade. The Viking Age was not just about raiding, but a global trade network. The raid on Lindisfarne is considered the first major attack that shook Europe and started the Viking Age. The historical success of the Vikings stemmed not only from being warriors who swung axes, but also from being the most important link in a global trade network. War and trade were like two sides of a coin for a Viking. Sometimes they returned to the lands they conquered as peaceful merchants. Viking armies were disciplined units capable of establishing structures like the Great Viking Army, which was considered massive for its time. Shield wall. Warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, overlapping their shields to create a wooden wall that was almost impossible to breach. Symbolism of the axe. While the sword was an expensive status symbol, the axe was the most basic weapon every Viking warrior could easily access, possessing devastating power on the battlefield. Berserkers. These wild warriors who wore bear or wolf skins and fought as if in a trance on the battlefield, created great psychological pressure on the enemy. Raid tactic. Thanks to their ships that could navigate shallow waters, they would infiltrate deep into rivers, plunder monasteries and cities before the alarm was raised, and retreat quickly. Global trade. Fur in exchange for silver. While raiding was a quick way to wealth for a Viking, real fortune lay in sustainable trade. They had established a massive network extending from Baghdad to England. They took fur, beeswax, ivory, amber, and slaves from the north. In return, they received silk, spices, and silver. The most valuable means of payment for the Vikings was silver. Thousands of silver coins from the Abbasid period found in excavations prove their deep commercial ties with Baghdad. They looked at the weight of the coins rather than their nominal value. A bridge between East and West Vikings played an active role not only in Europe but also in Anatolia and the Middle East. They traded in Byzantine lands and became the emperor's most trusted guards. They descended to the Caspian Sea using the Volga and Dnieper rivers, where they had intense commercial and military contacts with the Muslim and Turkic worlds. This dynamic structure of the Vikings made them the most influential power in the world between the 8th and 11th centuries. The replacement of the old gods by Christianity, the establishment of kingdoms, and the mixing of Vikings into settled European culture represent a critical epilogue representing the transition of Scandinavian history from the late Iron Age to the Middle Ages, known as the Viking Age. The death of Norwegian King Harald Hardrada at the Battle of Stamford Bridge is accepted as the end of large-scale Viking invasions, and this date is traditionally considered the end of the Viking Age. The conquest of England in 1066 by the descendants of Vikings in Normandy is the greatest example of how the Viking legacy integrated into Europe's feudal system. The acceptance of Christianity by leaders like King Harold Bluetooth played a critical role in the region adopting a medieval European identity. Old Norse paganism gradually gave way to Christianity. This situation enabled Scandinavia's cultural and political integration with the rest of Europe. Small chieftainships and local tribal structures transformed into larger and centralized kingdoms such as Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Traditional Viking activities such as raiding and seasonal incursions were replaced by a medieval feudal structure based on regular taxation, trade, and state diplomacy. As stated at the beginning, was this an extinction or a rebirth? Of course, this was not an extinction. For the reasons listed previously, Vikings are now the people of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Iceland, a community integrated into France, in Europe, and Russia in Asia. They are even ancient Scandinavian immigrants who left their roots in England, Greenland, and North America. Meanwhile, although claims are sometimes made that Vikings were Turks due to their lifestyles and cultures being similar to Central Asian Turks, they will remain the legendary coastal people of the North with their different religion, language, and way of life. They will be talked about and remembered from ear to ear and tongue to tongue centuries later, just as they are now.